Hello, friends. We are currently in South Carolina filming for movie number 3. We are still having our fundraiser. If you'd like to help us with donations for production, anything is greatly appreciated. We have links for you right in the description. I did not bring my good mic on this trip, so the audio for these podcasts the next few days on my end aren't the best, but still listenable. We'll be back in town next week, and we hope you have a great Halloween.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts, you have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Ryan Burns. First, it's almost Halloween. Go check out my films. Doors of Perception is on Amazon Prime. Occult Louisiana is on Tubi. Great films to watch for the Halloween season. We are booking guests for December. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today, I want to welcome back to the show Ryan Burns. He began researching the Uintah Basin and the mysterious skinwalkers in the area many years ago. He now owns property overlooking Skinwalker Ranch. He hosts the popular podcast Hero Paranormal and has written about his experiences investigating shapeshifters, UFOs, and precognitive intelligences. Ryan, welcome back. How you doing?
Doing great. Great to be here with you again, Chris.
It's great to have you, man. Really looking forward to today. It is the official FKN Halloween episode, and we're going to be sharing some of the super high strangeness and otherworldly happenings around your neck of the woods, the Uintah Basin. Also, world famous skinwalker and uber high strangeness area. You informed me before we got on here that you've got some very interesting files to look through. The Bigelow files, super excited about that. There's a lot to get into here on this Halloween Eve, but before we do, for those that may not be familiar, just remind them a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find out more.
Sure. My name is Ryan. A little bit about myself. I started to investigate the area known as the Bigelow Ranch or the Sherman Ranch, the Utah UFO Ranch. It has a ton of names. Long before it was famous. In fact, back when I started investigating it, there was no gates, there was no fence there at the beginning of entrance of it or the back end of it. You could just drive right through it. But um, I was unaware that it was part of a black budget Pentagon program at the time. And I had an array of very strange things happen. Since then, I've kind of that set the hook. I had some experiences, and I couldn't get unattached from the high strangeness. I just needed to know more, and I've been on that weird train ever since. I have a little podcast known as HeroParanormal.com. You can find it on YouTube at Hero Paranormal, also on social media, Instagram, Facebook. Got to stay off of the TikTok, but yeah, that's a little bit about myself. And actually ended up purchasing a property that shares a fence line with that ranch, and it is known as SpaceWolfResearch.com.
Right on, man. Well, to start out with, it's been a little while since we last spoke, and you're always looking at new experiments and information that's coming through there. Anything new besides the Bigelow files that we'll get into? Any new experiments or happenings? Anything profound that's happened since the last time we spoke?
Great question. And yeah, last time I saw you in person, you were actually at the ranch out there.
Yes.
So that was very epic.
Yeah, man.
The one thing we've been delving into is, believe it or not, some of the engineering that is involved with some of these topics that people believe don't exist.
Huh.
And to give you an idea, I'm talking about things like, well, zero point energy, quantum physics, and things. I had a great conversation with Ashton Forbes, and he was like, "This stuff's real, man." And I said, "I know, but how do you dig into this?" And go figure, with these topics, be careful what you ask for. They just kind of fall in your lap. So, yeah, we've been involved with some of the engineering and revolutionary topics, like multi-wave oscillators, um, and a variety of other plasma generators. But yeah, we're kind of getting into I'm taking physics courses. It's stuff I would never expect, and it's fascinating. It's definitely, I'm still definitely a knuckle dragger, but like they say, even rocket science isn't rocket science.
Right on, man. Any otherworldly encounters, strange creatures, beings, spiritual encounters since the last time we spoke?
Yes, there's been some really weird stuff. In fact, this week, this
Yeah.
is so crazy. Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, yeah. This week we had some really crazy stuff happen. And I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. We had cameras that we should be the only ones in charge of these cameras. And yet the cameras were being manipulated or basically remotely controlled by somebody other than ourselves. We noticed that the cameras were actually filming us, turning, swiveling. And when I called the
Whoa.
only other person, yeah, really creepy, man, really creepy. So I don't know. I called the only other person that was in control of the cameras. They said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And as I was talking to him, the camera kind of turned and pretended like it was looking. But yeah, it's just weird, just weird.
Yeah, man. I saw one picture you put up, which looked like a shadow of a cross or something that was floating in the air in front of your station there.
Absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Yes, that is one of the strangest ones. We tried everything we could to debunk it. It was literally, it looked like a hovering thin cross, and it even had a shadow on the ground.
Yeah.
And as you know, because of some of the high strangeness in the area, we've blessed a lot of the buildings, etc., put crosses all over the place. And I don't know if this was some sort of revolutionary exhibit of that energy or if it just
Mm.
was what it was, but it shocked us. We don't know what to make of it.
Right on. Any developing theories about the nature of what you're experiencing out there? If it is one grand intelligence that can present as different things, is it just some etheric energy that has consciousness? Is it exotic alien technology, some sort of spiritual demonic phenomena? What do you think?
All of the above. And it's weird because, people make these hard and fast stances like it's a technology. No, it's an alien artificial intelligence. No, it's a demonic. No, they're angels. And what the best way to explain it is in some of the strange engineering that takes place with reverse engineering, exotic propulsion systems, and a variety of different technologies. What they're finding in some of the laboratories, and I've heard this from a whistleblower at CERN, is that, in fact, a whistleblower who claims that there are these entities in all sorts of places. But when you're doing something fascinating that can manipulate space and time, it seems as if certain entities, whether you want to call those demons or not. Demons is a good word because the word demon and the word angel actually can be used as a noun and a verb. So um, most people think it's a thing, but it's actually a task. An angel or a demon are just messengers. And so it can be used as a verb. And I like the word demon, but it's overplayed. But you got to call them something, right? And when you have some of these exotic technologies that you are investigating, researching, creating in certain spaces, what we have found is that time and time again, entities will come in from the corners, especially. They like corners. And it kind of is fascinating that I'm getting a lot of other people telling me that they're finding the same thing. An amazing example of that is there was a project by a gentleman called Joe Firmage, who's now in a heap of trouble. But at the time, he was trying to create this anti-gravity 0-point energy system known as the bouncing box with the help of people like Hal Puthoff, Kit Green, Ron Pandolfi, and a number of the typical characters.
Yeah.
And what they found is sure enough the same thing. So we find this time and time again where insiders are telling us, whether that's at CERN or at this place they call the Lake, this lab in Utah, back when Joe Firmage was doing this. And Brandon Fugel actually has the actual box in his office now. But what's interesting is that these technologies, regardless of what they are, according to whistleblowers and people that are there, I'm getting this information in many cases third person. I've seen it myself in our own tests. But yeah, entities will kind of try to crawl out of corners and it reminds me of like why the original like Orthodox churches have all of those rounded tops and no corners, because they're trying to keep those things from showing up.
Wow. It makes me wonder if those entities that you're just speaking of are a greater part of a system, because I think of reports of people who are coming out of anesthesia, or even the Dysenian goggles, where it shows a layer of reality that we cannot normally perceive. People waking up from anesthesia claim to see angels and demons for a little while until they completely come out of that. And I'm wondering if it's a layer of reality that's blocked off normally, but we get a glimpse of through certain substances or states of mind or altered states, things like that. We get a glimpse of what's beyond our limited perception.
That's huge, huge. And it's that spectrum that we live in, whether we want to call this a reality or not. Humans can only see a portion of the visible light spectrum. In fact, a narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum. And we only see approximately from like 380 to 700 nanometers, which, if this was a pie, is just a super thin slice. And so it's alleged, and I believe, and through a lot of research and investigation, it seems that there's all sorts of living things around us, most of which are non-corporeal. And a whistleblower that was tied to CERN was telling me that they believe that they are in communication through portal technology with entities on things like 3i Atlas and other things. And that many of these entities just don't have bodies. They don't need them.
From what I understand, talking with different experiencers, researchers, the nature of whatever this phenomena is can present as benevolent or malevolent. But according to some of the lower level entities really don't want anything to do with humanity. They're just existing. It's some at the higher levels of intelligence that do have an interest, but possibly for manipulation of some kind, and it's not for our benefit. A lot of the communication that comes from these higher intelligences, if you look at some of the cases close enough as they develop, some of these people seem to be steered in certain directions. Their entire lives change, but they spread a certain narrative, whether it's about extraterrestrials or the nature of our reality. These beings seem to be seeding information. And for some, I guess time will tell if it's benevolent, if it benefits them in any way. But in many cases, it just leads to madness. So I'm wondering what the true nature of some of these higher intelligences really are, if they do have our best interests in mind, or are they just trying to manipulate us to try and bring about something else?
Such a great question, Chris. You don't mess around. You just slice to the bone, man. Yes. The best way, again, back to that narrow spectrum that we can see, when we are trying to disseminate the intentions of entities that are not only far more advanced, but just higher in the pay scale, if you want to call it on a spiritual basis, whether they're way below us or way above us, we are running that through a human filter. So, for example, and this is kind of a bad example because, as I said, I'm trying to run this through a human filter. If you run into two people on the street and one is a multi-billionaire and the other one is, hungry, dying for their next meal and armed, which one poses more of a threat? And arguably, they pose the same threat. One needs nothing, but will most likely manipulate you. The other one needs everything, but most likely will manipulate you. And it's basically our perception of what transpires on whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing. And you take like I mean, there's so many different examples, but yeah, one thing they have in common is they're not us.
Mm.
So that's one is extremely jealous of us. The lower entities despise us, and the higher entities view us as something else as well. So I don't know if it, but yeah, it's very difficult for us to explain or perceive whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And it could seem like a good thing in the moment, but long term be catastrophic.
Let's get into some of the deeper possibilities surrounding the nature of our reality. You were telling me that you have access to some of Bigelow's files, which may give us clues to some of this information. I know he was deep in this and he didn't share any of the research. Now you have your hands on it, so I'd love to hear about some of the things if you can tell us.
Yes, there's a lot of interesting things out there. Not only interesting in as much as what the public knows and believes, but interesting in when you compare it to what actually happened. They're very different. What I can tell you is that there was a number of occult means and methods that were used to connect with some of these entities, high strangeness, precognitive sentient intelligence, or whatever it is that roams this landscape. It seems like it has an easier way to bounce in and bounce out. And it also seems as if there's a number of different entities, and some of them are very much appearing as a technology, but the best explanation I can give you is it's like going out in the ocean on a moonlit night and it's very still and you just start smacking the water. Uh things some things are going to go away that live in the ocean and other things are going to come in.
Mm.
And typically the things that are going to come in you don't want to be messing with.
So is there any other information that you've got from the files that you would be able to share about the nature of the experience, any experiments that he was doing that wasn't widely known?
Yeah, there's a number of experiments, and some of them I don't know exactly how much I can discuss.
Mm.
What I can tell you is these confidential files have, well, I'll get into some of the more exciting stuff,
Yeah.
which is some of the prototypes and designs that they were using for unmanned autonomous surveillance platforms. And
Wow.
really, really cool stuff. Also, there were task forces involved that kind of blew my mind. In other words, it went deeper than most people think. And also some of the investigations into the anomalies involved human physiological effects, which I thought was really strange. And the reports show that. But yeah, there's so much data. I was absolutely shocked to receive, so much information, anything and everything, all that transpired while he was there, and basically serving as the owner of that area. And there's a lot of private information that's protected, but very much it was a part of a black budget Pentagon funded project. And they were very much involved with things that are out of this world, to say the least.
Well, speaking of out of this world, we have been presented an extraterrestrial narrative for a very long time that these beings are coming from different planets across the galaxy to experiment on us or warn us about cataclysms or whatever these fictional aliens do. But I think we're dealing with something much more ancient, something that is local here in this realm, in this reality, or at least has access at any time. It seems to be able to pull strings in this reality. It seems to take over our perception at times. It seems to have extreme power in this reality. I was talking to a guest I had on. He's going to be coming on again next month, Ramex. Are you familiar with him? He's the host of 40 and Wins and a researcher. He has almost completely flipped his perspective about the extraterrestrial hypothesis, that it is indeed something more metaphysical. A lot of the high-level people involved, when you really start digging in it with them, they're doing rituals, they have numerology involved, some sort of magic essentially is at play with some of the communication going on at higher levels. Are you familiar with Alan Greenfield, secret cipher of the euphonauts? He was using these ciphers with certain numerical principles. He was combining it with numerology and feeding it through a AI database, but also using certain high-level people's names. The numbers would correspond to letters in the name in very profound ways, and they would always match some esoteric number that, for example, Crowley would be highly involved with. And he came to the conclusion that a lot of these high-level abductees and even presidents and people that are at high levels of power, the information that came out of these ciphers displayed possibilities that they could be lifetime actors, that their entire identities could have been manufactured to match these numerical ciphers so that whatever we're in would work according to the program, meaning that whatever this reality is somewhat like a simulation, you could say, and there are certain parameters that dictate what our reality would be, and it is highly associated with numerology and people's names and astrology, and people at high levels know this. I want to get your thoughts on that because I know that you've experienced some of this information as well.
Yeah, it's so great. This is one of the fascinating questions. And you have to remember that we see things so simply, so linearly. When we think of extraterrestrial, we're just talking about entities that are able to come from or leave this terrestrial location we're at. It's such a simplified version. And that being said, I have to jump a few spots on the chessboard because in reality, anything that can do that, anything that can travel in that way, shape, or form that is more advanced than ourselves is manipulating space and time. And what we have to remember is who we are as human beings. And we are something that is inside of this meat suit, right? This corporeal container. And while that can be seen as an extreme detriment and, literally kind of nasty, at the same time, some of these non-corporeal entities, whether they're holographic or dimensional in nature, whether they're extraterrestrial or not, see this as a big plus because what we are is essentially craft. What I mean is we have a container, we have a craft. Our consciousness is encased in a container, in a craft. And kind of leading back to what we were talking about before, some of these entities are extremely jealous of that. And a lot of philosophers and theologists and people much more intelligent than myself who have studied a variety of these different entities, whether they be jinn, angels, and whatever the case might be. And this is cross-cultural. Some of these, like the jinn, for example, is extremely jealous of the fact that we have this temple as a body or this body as a temple. It might be for a limited period of time, but still, that's like walking on the sidewalk and seeing a guy pull up in a vehicle, a car. Essentially, that car is something we want because it's an added layer of protection. And it's something that can be seen as an extreme plus. Back to the manipulating of space and time, the extraterrestrial hypothesis, I think, automatically almost always gets thrown out. And I'll tell you why. Because if you can manipulate space and time at all, the extraterrestrial hypothesis really has no place in the conversation because everywhere is all of the sudden accessible. So it is who cares where they came from, where they're going, or where they're headed. If they're able to do this, it immediately goes into a hyperdimensional hypothesis or a non-corporeal hypothesis or a holographic hypothesis, or even more provocative, the fact that they're not even here, but they can interject themselves and move in and out of our timeline as they wish. And to understand that, if you look at the human body, and you see this in many of the really interesting, I find, ancient mystery schools, religions, occult orders, things like the Knights Templar, etc., you see that the temple is a body, that it has like an altar right here at the shoulders. A porch would be down near the waistline. The altar of sacrifice would be the feet. And the head, of course, would be the most important, where the brain is. That's why many of these, it's kind of the holy of holies, why they wear turbans in the Middle East, and it's protected. But we have craft, and it reminds me of Bob Lazar when he was asked, what is the most top secret thing you found when you were working at Area 51 at S4? And he said that the most top secret thing he found were that these entities viewed us as containers.
Some of the information we're discussing right now leads many to wonder if humans even have free will. Because of the amount of manipulation, because of how much they can control our reality, alter our perception, show us what they want us to see, feed us profound information, makes me wonder if free will is even really something that we understand as it is.
This is a great question, and theologists have had this argument for a long time, specifically people that are non-believers in, let's say, a creator God. And they argue the fact, if God is omniscient, if he is able to perfectly, completely have universal knowledge of all things, past, present, and future, he's doing what we're talking about, right? He's able to pop in, pop out. And the reason I'm using the God understanding is because many people that are atheists, for example, say, well, we don't have free will. if God knows all things, the past, the present, the future, both actual and possible, then we have no free will. He already knows. But the argument is made, he just knows because he is able to go to the past, the future, and the present. What we actually do is still up to us.
Hmm.
To be in after the fact, after we do it, yeah, we can say, oh, that's not fair because he knows. That's true. But still, we have the ability to choose and decide. And that's pretty fascinating. In fact, it's kind of like Costanza world is the argument I prefer the best, which, if you've ever seen Jerry Seinfeld, George Costanza, who does everything wrong, decides to just do the opposite of what his initial intention is. And, his life goes fantastic. And, that's the way you have to look at it. But yeah, it's a foundational attribute of God. But it's not to say that there aren't other entities or godlike demigods or Elohim that can't do the same. This
Hmm.
is, it's magic. It really is magic. The simultaneous nature of space and time all occurring once at the same time. It's like that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's how they see it.
Hmm.
But because we see so little of the spectrum, we have to literally make sense of it. And the
Hmm.
way our minds make sense of it is we create this illusion of time. Well, I did this yesterday, so I'm going to do it today and I'm going to do it tomorrow. As an example, when we emerged, let's say, from our caves as ancient man and it was nighttime, we noticed that not as many people came back to the cave. Like things were taking us out and we
Hmm.
didn't see what those things were. So the next day we were like, you know what? Let's go out when it's light and maybe we carry a stick. And
Yeah.
so we start to do these things and they work. So it's a lot of it is just we're habitual creatures. We're very low level.
Some of the phenomena throughout history seems to be an evolutionary trigger to steer humanity in certain directions, for us to develop in certain ways. Some consider that at some point there may have been some sort of parasitic, etheric invasion into our consciousness or into this realm somehow that acts as the same evolutionary trigger, but for something different to bring about a different outcome for humanity. What are your thoughts on that?
I love this. And this is so great because it if energy is working the way we think it is, which I've beyond a shadow of a doubt proven to myself, that energy is not what we believe it is. We are essentially little batteries, with the sun, what we intake with carbohydrates, with H2O, water, we are able to function as these little batteries. And if we are batteries, that means we have real ingredients, real energy within us. Uh, Archonically speaking, there are entities that don't have that, and that is delicious to them, and they can feed upon it. So they're very parasitic in nature. In fact, what's strange is if you go back to the Greeks, man, people kind of like don't realize how on point they were about a lot of this stuff. They spoke about Mount Olympus and they had Zeus as the head god and all these other gods that had certain, tricks they could do, parlor tricks, let's say, and that typically they were manipulating us and they had vested interests in how things went. And sometimes they had grudges and they were using humanity to just kind of engineer their grudges. But in Greek, archon is a term for ruler, which is super
Yeah.
freaky from a
Yeah.
Gnostic, that's like creepy from a Gnostic perspective. So I 100% believe we have parasites in the small spectrum we can see. We all have them. And um, so when you go into the cosmic, there's even more parasites, and they can both uh, suck you of all your energy or be careful because some can give you too much energy and that could also be detrimental. But I think there's both malevolent and benevolent spiritual rulers.
One of the most concerning parts about that is it seems that they are playing on our beliefs, our theological beliefs. And again, it goes back to whatever they want us to see them as, they can appear as a form of manipulation. For me, the question is ultimately, where can this lead humanity if we're getting contradicting messages from these spiritual beings that are attempting to evolve us in different directions? Do you think the reason we're in a chaotic period is maybe because unseen forces are trying to guide humanity in different directions?
100%. These and there's a reason these are unseen forces, and I love that you said that, because when they are seen, we don't know how to take them. And
Mm,
there's a reason. I've seen this in real time myself with other researchers, and I believe maybe they were lower level. I mean, who am I to judge? But maybe lower level entities, but entities that can shapeshift. They can go from they can coalesce basically out of nothing or dust into physical beings, and then they can change, demanifest, and turn into another physical being. And it's sort of like, well, what do you want to see? And that's such a creepy thing, because it's like, here we're begging to see something from the unseen realm. And when we see it, if it scares us, it almost appears as if these entities are like, well, what do you expect? What do you want? This is your brain that's seeing this, not me. And we run into this biblically, we run into it in theology. I love the example of Ezekiel seeing angels that at first horrified him. And same thing, they're like, well, what the heck do you want? Tell us what you want, and we'll appear as that.
right.
And that's the fascinating thing. These things can manifest. And the word man in the word manifest is the key word there, because these are spiritual beings who built the physical universe. And it seems that the more tangible they are, the more malevolent they are.
Mm,
And that could be seen as a positive. In fact, ask any Satanist, and they're going to say, well, I'm getting what I want. But then again,
right.
you have to ask yourself, these are things that can give you whatever you want. So is that a good thing? And then you see people like Job, who has an absolutely horrible life, but he's staying true to what he believes. So in my opinion, if these entities that have created the material world also trap souls, how would they go about using that lower power to trap those souls? And it's very Gnostic, but I think the Gnostics had a lot going for them.
I want to shift gears a bit. Last time you were on, we briefly discussed the possibility of manufactured beings like chimeras that may be being put together in some sort of lab or facility. You mentioned that there may be a facility like that close to where you are, and there have been sightings of what seem to be very physical, cryptid-like beings, chimeras, dogmen, other types of creatures. And there's speculation that maybe these are lab created beings, right?
Yeah, this is great because it depends on what your definition of a lab is. You know,
Right.
maybe this physical existence in this material world that we understand is also a lab. And if you follow the Anunnaki at all, that group of deities from ancient Sumeria,
Mm,
it's very likely the earliest Sumerian writings were talking about how we were created beings. And even if you fast forward to Egypt, a lot of their deities seem to be creative beings, jackal-headed gods, like this. I mean, things that look like modern day dogman. And yes, in Utah there are, I can't say the name of the company, but there are genetic corporations involved in research, and these things are running through a lot of animals. And we've talked to people who are whistleblowers who've kind of pulled us aside and told us some of the stories. So we know it's happening. Um, and just take a company. I'm not no, I'm not even going to go there. Yes, it's happening.
Let's talk about some of the low-key rituals that may be occurring, especially from our own military-industrial complex. I've heard different researchers discussing how at rocket launches, there are essentially sigils on the rockets, and it is a signal to whatever is out there. And there's much more going on with rocket launches. There seems to be a cult value to it that they're utilizing. I've heard, I believe from you, that even high-level military individuals will go out there to do different types of rituals. Is that right?
There is what I like to call, it's not my word, but sanctioned dark rituals that are military and not officially recognized. That's we're talking about the unacknowledged. I mean, that's why they call it that, the unacknowledged files. And these are illicit and often dangerous practices utilizing technologies and individuals for ceremonies that would otherwise be forbidden by regulations in many places. And like you said, rocket launches are a great example. Here we are shooting off rockets with Greek and Roman gods' names written on the sides of them. And we're talking about literally a burnt offering. We're lighting this obelisk, shooting it into space to the heavens. And this is done under the guise of science. However, depending on who you talk to, there's different reasons for these rockets to be getting shot up there. And it's an ultra rare corner of intelligence, but you run into the same people over and over again. So it's like really easy once you start pulling the layers of obfuscation away, you realize that it's the same people doing the same things in the same situations. And we're talking about people like who I like to call, nothing against Travis Taylor, but I like to call the real Dr. Taylor, which is Timothy Taylor, the gentleman who was in Diana Pasulka's book, American Cosmic. Yeah, she called him Tyler Durden because, from Fight Club, the first rule about Fight Club. and he's got a great book out called Launch Fever. And he is actually quite similar to Travis Taylor, just a lot more secretive and involved in a lot more things. So both out of the same area of the United States, both heavily dealing with NASA. And NASA is very, very much, a lot of people argue, there's a great book out there called The Secret Religion of the Elites. And many people argue that NASA is sort of this modern scientific pointing in the direction of Project Bluebeam. And what I mean is where they try to strip us away eventually, according to the Canadian Manost, who first came up with the idea of Project Bluebeam, that they eventually tried to through a holographic or a grand scheme, an amazing deception, the powers that be, technically a new world order or a one world government, will eventually realize that, hey, these Abrahamic religions are no longer working for us. These people are entrenched in their beliefs and they're not going to give up some of their freedoms. They rather die. And this is too difficult to manage this herd. So because of those cosmic entities that are basically the puppet masters and in control of these individuals at the heads of power, they are going to utilize a specific plan of attack, which would be this holographic or blue beam representation of a new higher power, Nasatology, and this Nasatology, in other words, this new higher power is going to basically prove itself to us visually. Oh, hey, look, we're seeing what it's doing. That's good enough for us. It's better than these Abrahamic religions that just claim to be there.
Wow.
And so we will hope that we will hopefully let go of our old religions and enter into this new reality where we take their new gods, even though they're not real, and make
Wow.
this a family thing and follow their direction, and will be easier to control.
We can see this progression for a very long time that they are trying to alter our spiritual systems of belief and most likely combine it with technology in some way, which we're already seeing. I want to get your thoughts on the nature of paranormal phenomena. It seems that we are constantly redefining it, especially with the research done at places like Skinwalker Ranch. There are so many crossovers and occurrences that could be seen as hauntings or it could be seen as extraterrestrial activity. When you look at, say, a haunted house, for example, poltergeist activity, disembodied voices, people used to say, oh, that's the spirit of grandma or someone who used to live in this house. Well, now I question that with all this new information. Could it just be this grand intelligence that has access to that and presents as that? What do you think?
So great. Oh man, this is huge. This is so deep. Okay. I believe, well, okay, let's get into what I know.
Mm,
And that is there's a group of deities, and I think you and I agree with the fact that there is a group of deities who seem to have the ability to manipulate space and time.
yeah.
And we technically, as human beings, sort of live in a haunted house. We have memory that we retain and we can't get rid of.
Mm,
We I live in a haunted house. My consciousness is a haunted house.
right.
And so, yeah, there seems to be this residual nature about our reality where, and the area that you're talking about in the Uinta Basin of Utah, in and around Space Wolf Research, is the same, where you will see things like dire wolves, like dino beavers. You'll see creatures that essentially should not exist or used to exist in the area. And I'm just going to pull out a tooth. This is a dire wolf tooth as an example. And and
Wow.
and they will sometimes leave physical apports is what they call them.
Yes. I
You know?
wanted to get into that, but continue.
Yeah, like we'll have things like just appear like a great example. I had a fish literally fall out of the sky the other day. And it's right there. I've got
Oh,
a
wow.
picture of it. There's and we will the same thing with other body parts of animals. And so is the creature actually there, or are we just getting these little breadcrumbs from the demigods or the precognitive sentient intelligence or this group of deities? What's strange is this is not unique. If you look historically, there's many examples of this happening in many places. And if you go back to the origins of humanity, and I always go back to as far as we can go, thank goodness the Sumerians wrote everything in rock. So it's there. They spoke of these specific powerful gods and how you could draw their favor or be cursed by them. And in this pantheon of different demigods and non-human intelligences, which is the new catchphrase, but a really good example is there was a prisoner who was a serial killer, by the way, and he got caught. He was worshiping a god, a deity, a familiar known as Pazuzu, which
Mm,
went all the
yeah.
way back to ancient Mesopotamia, the time of the Sumerians. This is a Sumerian god known as Pazuzu, and this guy actually changed his name to Pazuzu. And he was in prison, and he would always offer him something, whether it was a bag of chips, some cigarettes, a pack of gum. But one night, it was like that time of the moonth, the moon cycle. He had to give the god something, and he had nothing. And he
Uh-oh.
begged the prison guards, "Give me anything, man. I don't care what it is. This thing is gonna have me for dinner or lunch if you don't
Wow.
give me something." And they thought he was crazy, obviously.
Yeah.
And but sure enough, they found him dead the next morning with catastrophic wounds. Like it appeared to be like claws and teeth.
Whoa.
And this deity apparently consumed him. And when you look at the deities of Mesopotamian pantheons, even the Anunnaki, when you look at the word Anu, it means princely offspring, those of royal blood. I mean, we're talking Nephilim, we're talking demons.
All right, you mentioned apports. Let's close on this.
Yeah.
I had Nathaniel Gillis on recently. He was discussing this a little bit as it relates to the possession phenomena, how apports would come out of people's bodies, objects that they didn't ingest. He also cited this one haunting case where the owners of the house had a set of teacups, all came from the same set. They lost a cup, but it showed up magically one day and it kept disappearing and reappearing. It was an anomalous phenomena, so they decided to bring that cup to the lab because they were already having their house investigated by paranormal investigators. They brought it to a lab, and it turned out the object had different isotopes from every other piece in that set. So what that essentially says is this phenomena is creating objects out of nothing and manifesting them, but they're physical. You can't tell the difference. So how far does this go? To what extent can they manifest objects into our reality? That is crazy. And you look at the gifting fields where these high-level intelligence people go to just pick up the gifts that the gods are dropping for them, and they look like everyday objects or pieces of nature, but they're different somehow. That's absolutely nuts, man.
It is. And it when you realize that this whole creation is absolutely nuts. Anybody that watches, that cheesy series, The Secret, realizes that's literally what they did was open source a nuclear weapon with that series. And just if you want it, just there it is. and as hokey and cheesy as it is,
There's something to it.
There's something to it.
Yeah.
And if these entities and these precognitive sentient intelligence or non-human intelligences are literally in part, which I believe they are, I believe the Elohim, they have a variety of names. And if they are truly the creators of this material world, then a material object that arrives suddenly and mysteriously through unobserved powers is not that far-fetched. And I love the example of King Solomon when he got his fancy ring from an angel, and he could all of a sudden call down these non-human intelligences and have them build things like his temple. This is absolutely fascinating. And I'm sure if you and I were alive back then witnessing this, we would say, this is witchcraft. This is whatever we're watching is either highly technological or something else. And we're still at the same impasse these days with things like AI and exotic propulsion systems and 0-point energy and quantum physics. And, going after, they build this, we're expected to believe they spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions at this point. I think it's hundreds. Anyway, CERN, we're expected to believe, hey, don't mind what we're doing here, but we're just after this one particle. We just need to get this one particle.
Yeah.
And, there's something going on.
Oh, yeah, man. Well, this was awesome, man. Before I let you go, you got any plans for Halloween?
Yeah, I plan on just watching the kids dress up, having fun. I think I might be a banana or something simple. But having a good time with it, because historically Halloween was a spooky time. And we have to remember that people used to go, when the kids would say trick or treat and you give them the candy and everybody has a good laugh now, you used to get unexpected visitors at your door and they would say trick or treat. And what that meant at the time was, give me something or I'm about to show you something absolutely horrifying.
Yeah.
And so we live in good times.
Right on, man. Well, this was great. We will definitely be doing it again. Before I let you go, remind the audience how they can find out more about you.
Thanks so much, Chris. You're a blessing to the community. Yeah, you can find me at heroparanormal.com or our little science project, spacewolfresearch.com. And yeah, keep following Forbidden Knowledge News. It's one of the most organic, raw, and real podcasts out there.
Right on, man. I love it. We'll be doing this again. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We will talk again on Monday. See y'all then.
Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order. Hello friends, I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description. Hello friends, if you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey, knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order. The nature of this experience seems to always be just beyond the reach of our science, technology, and consciousness collective.
There's layers upon layers upon layers.
It does add such an element of mystery to this place.
Why are we here?
We're getting closer to the truth now.
There's too many people experiencing profound interactions with conscious entities.
I'm focused on the non-human intelligence contact phenomenon in dreams. Dreams involve interactions with real entities.
People are waking up paralyzed. They're sensing or seeing something very evil in the room.
I have experienced sleep paralysis. Shadow people start to appear.
I was taken from my earliest memories by non-human alien entities. More and more people are wanting to talk about these things.
A ufologist would say, well, that's obviously an extraterrestrial. And a paranormal researcher would say, well, that's a ghost. Well, what if it's all of those things and none of those things? The entities, the intelligence that were just beyond our understanding.
There seems to be something a little extra that can take forms of anything.
I can't believe what I've seen, but it continues on a daily basis. We're definitely not alone. UFOs, UAPs, portals opening up.
I live with all this supernatural stuff. You kind of grow up with that around here. You see a lot of strange things. I don't like to talk about skinwalkers too much.
I had an experience with a skinwalker entity.
People, they would say they would transform into bears, into wolves. There's these bad things that occur. Ghosts, UFOs, and all types of things coming from somewhere.
Our beliefs, our emotions, and our fears all seem to heavily influence the nature of these experiences.
There is so much more that we just don't have time for in this busy, loud, noisy life that we lead.
All of this is planned. Everything is synchronicity.
There's so much more out there. We really are picking up such a small percentage of the electromagnetic spectrum.
The world is an amazing place.
It feels like we're gods in training.